There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true, the other is to refuse to believe what is true. Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. I found I had less and less to say, until finally, I became silent and began to listen. I discovered in the silence the voice of God. Love does not alter the beloved, it alters itself. Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. Who am I? How did I come into the world? Why was I not consulted? People demand freedom of speech as a compensation for the freedom of thought which they seldom use. Trouble is the common denominator of the living. It is the great equalizer. Geniuses are like thunderstorms. They go against the wind, terrify people, clear the air. Truth is not introduced into the individual from without, but was within him all the time. Love discovers truths about individuals that others cannot see. It is hard to believe because it is hard to obey. It is better to try something and fail than to try nothing and succeed. The result may be the same, but you won't be. We always grow more through defeats than victories. People settle for a level of despair they can tolerate and call it happiness. Hope is passion for what is possible. There is nothing with which every man is so afraid as getting to know how enormously much he is capable of doing and becoming. Take a chance and you may lose. Take not a chance and you have lost already. If I could prescribe only one remedy for all the ills of the modern world, I would prescribe silence. It is not where we breathe, but where we love, that we live. The minority is always stronger than the majority, because the minority is generally formed by those who really have an opinion. Do it or don't do it, you will regret both. Wherever there is a crowd, there is untruth. Life has its own hidden forces which you can only discover by living. The unhappy person is never present to themselves because they always live in the past or the future. The door to happiness opens outward. The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly one you'll never have. The function of prayer is not to influence God, but rather to change the nature of the one who prays. The tyrant dies and his rule is over. The martyr dies and his rule begins. The question is not to be or not to be, it is what we should be until we are not. God creates everything out of nothing. And everything which God is to use, he first reduces to nothing. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. Our life always expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. During the first period of a man's life, the greatest danger is not to take the risk. Confidence is the present tense of hope. Far from idleness being the root of all evil, it is rather the only true good. If a man cannot forget, he will never amount to much. The more people who believe something, the more apt it is to be wrong. The person who's right often has to stand alone. Boredom is the root of all evil, the despairing refusal to be oneself. Only the noble of heart are called to difficulty. It is essential, in relationships and all tasks, that we concentrate only on what is most significant and important. The highest and most beautiful things in life are not to be heard about, nor read about, nor seen, but, if one will, are to be lived. Once you label me, you negate me. Unhappiness is not to love without being loved, but to be loved when one does not love. Personality is only ripe when a man has made the truth his own. The truth is a trap. You cannot get it without it getting you. You cannot get the truth by capturing it, only by its capturing you. The thing that cowardice fears most is decision. To cheat oneself out of love is the most terrible deception. It is an eternal loss for which there is no reparation, either in time or in eternity. Once can advise comfortably from a safe port. It is the duty of the human understanding to understand that there are things which it cannot understand. Face the facts of being what you are, for that is what changes what you are. The self-assured believer is a greater sinner in the eyes of God than the troubled disbeliever. It is not the path which is the difficulty, rather, it is the difficulty which is the path. Patience is necessary, and one cannot reap immediately where one has sown. Most people are subjective toward themselves and objective toward all others, frightfully objective sometimes, but the task is precisely to be objective toward oneself and subjective toward all others. To love another in spite of his weaknesses and errors and imperfections is not perfect love. No, to love is to find him lovable in spite of and together with his weakness and errors and imperfections. The best news the world has ever heard came from a graveyard: Christ is risen. What if everything in the world were a misunderstanding? What if laughter were really tears? People understand me so poorly that they don't even understand my complaint about them not understanding me. What is a poet? An unhappy person who conceals profound anguish in his heart but whose lips are so formed that as sighs and cries pass over them they sound like beautiful music. Once you are born in this world, you're old enough to die.
Hey winners, please subscribe and like now. Your support